They were the kind of couple everyone envied, the perfect match under every starry sky. Marybeline and Max shared a love so deep it seemed unbreakable, the kind of love that made people believe in soulmates. But life has a way of testing even the strongest bonds. For Marybeline and Max, the test came in the form of an empty nursery, vacant dreams of tiny feet running down their hallway. Little did Marybeline know, the cracks in their picture-perfect love had already begun to spread, quietly, silently, until the truth shattered everything. The warm glow of their suburban home felt like a sanctuary to outsiders, but within its walls, a longing gnawed at their hearts. Marybeline, always brimming with ambition and energy, dreamed of being not just a wife, but also a mother. Max, her rock and her anchor, wanted the same. But no matter how much they tried, the tests came back negative. Their hope crumbled month after month. "We're going to get through this," Max whispered one night, holding her close as her tears soaked his shirt. His voice was steady, but his heart was restless. Desperation began to consume Max. Marybeline threw herself into her work and hobbies, masking her pain with productivity. But Max? He couldn't bear the waiting, the aching emptiness. He wanted to give his wife the world, and when it seemed he couldn't, he made a decision he would soon regret, a decision driven by his desperation to feel like a father, no matter the cost. Her name was Cassandra, a coworker who had always admired him from a distance. Max never loved her. He didn't even want her. But in a moment of weakness, he crossed a line he told himself he never would. 9 months later, there was a little boy, a fragile soul born out of Max's secret betrayal. Max did everything he could to keep Cassandra and the baby out of his and Marybeline's world. He confessed nothing, determined to shield Marybeline from the storm he had created. For a time, he almost believed he could juggle the lie. But secrets have a way of surfacing, especially when they involve tiny hands and innocent eyes. One chilly autumn afternoon, Marybeline went to the local grocery store, humming a tune to distract herself from the stillness of her home. As she turned a corner near the bakery section, she froze. There was Max, with a woman she didn't recognize, but what truly stole the air from her lungs was the toddler in Max's arms. The child had his father's bright green eyes. Eyes Marybeline knew better than her own. She didn't confront him then and there. She couldn't. Instead, she staggered home, her legs weak, her chest tight, and her mind spinning. She sat in their living room, the light from the window casting long shadows as the hours passed, and her emotions shifted from confusion to anger to heartbreak. By the time Max returned home, she was ready. "Who is he, Max?" Marybeline's voice trembled, not with weakness, but with rage. Max's face paled, and for the first time in their marriage, he looked afraid. The arguments that followed were like thunderclaps after a calm storm. Marybeline's raw pain filled every corner of their home, and Max had no choice but to admit the truth. He begged for forgiveness, falling to his knees, his eyes pleading. "I did it for us, Marybeline," he cried. "I didn't know what else to do. I wanted to be a father. I didn't mean for this to happen, but now he's here and I—" "Stop." Her voice was quiet, yet it silenced him completely. "How could you think giving up on me was the answer? How could you think this was love?" Tears burned Marybeline's eyes, but she didn't let them fall. She stared at this man she had once vowed to love forever, the man who had shattered her faith in love and marriage. For days, Marybeline kept to herself, weighing her options. Could she ever forgive him? Could she ever look at him the same way again? Max tried to win her back, filling the house with flowers, letters, and promises that this time would be different. But promises seemed so fragile now, like glass ready to shatter under pressure. One late night, as Marybeline sat curled up with a cup of tea, the answers came to her. She didn't want to live as a shadow of her former self, defined by bitterness and betrayal. Life had dealt her pain, but she still had the choice to decide her future. The next morning, she stood in the kitchen waiting for Max, her expression calm but unreadable. He walked in, his face weary from nights of sleepless guilt. He looked at her with hesitation, as though he feared she had made a decision he couldn't bear. "We need to talk," she said, her voice steady. Max nodded silently, bracing himself. Marybeline set her cup of tea down on the counter and folded her hands. "I spent the last few days thinking about everything. About the life we had, the life we wanted, and the life we have now. I loved you, Max, with everything I had. I believed in us. And then you went behind my back to fill a void you didn't even give me the chance to help you heal." His shoulders slumped, his guilt hanging heavily in the air. She continued, her voice soft but resolute. "You gave someone else the one thing we were supposed to build together, a child. I can't pretend I'm not heartbroken, Max. But I've realized something. I don't deserve to be second place in my marriage. I don't deserve secrets and lies." She looked him in the eyes, her gaze piercing but calm. "I deserve honesty, respect, and a partner who fights with me, not behind my back." "I love you, Marybeline," Max said desperately. His voice cracked as he stepped toward her. "I made a mistake, a terrible mistake. I'll do anything to fix this." Marybeline held up a hand, stopping him in his tracks. "No, Max. You can't undo what you've done. And I can't live in a world where I have to look at you and wonder if you meant every word you said to me or if you're still hiding something. That's not the life you promised me, and it's not the life I'm willing to settle for." Max's eyes filled with tears, his chest rising and falling as his breath hitched. "Are you saying?" His words trailed off. "I'm saying that I can't carry this pain with me anymore," she said, her voice breaking slightly for the first time. "I need to heal, Max. And I can't do that here, not with you." Marybeline packed her suitcase that day, taking with her the strength she didn't know she had before. The love she felt for Max didn't disappear. It was still there, buried deep beneath the cracks and the betrayal. But she knew that love alone wasn't enough to fix what had been broken. She moved into a small apartment in the heart of the city, one with just enough space for her and the dreams she was determined to rebuild. The nights were hard and lonely at first, filled with questions that had no answers. But over time, Marybeline found herself again, stronger, wiser, and unshackled from a love that had betrayed her. Meanwhile, Max was left to grapple with his decisions. He visited his son often, watching the boy grow, and realizing that while he had a piece of fatherhood, he had lost the woman who made his life feel whole. For months, he wrote Marybeline letters he never sent, each one an outpouring of regret and love. He prayed every day that she might come back, but deep down, he knew she was gone, not out of anger, but out of self-preservation. The boy, Jake, was a constant reminder of his actions, both the love he felt for his son and the heartbreak he had caused. Max vowed to be a good father and to raise Jake with honor and integrity. He couldn't change the past, but he could shape the future. Years later, on a breezy summer afternoon, Marybeline stood at the corner of a park, waiting for her friend. Her face was brighter now, her smile freer. She had built a successful career and surrounded herself with friends who lifted her higher. She had even started thinking about opening her heart again, though she knew it would take time. As she leaned against a wooden railing, lost in thought, a familiar voice broke through her daydream. "Marybeline?" She turned, her heart skipping a beat. There stood Max, older and a little rougher around the edges, but still the same man she once loved. Beside him stood a little boy with bright green eyes, eyes that stole her breath the same way they had years ago. "Max," she said, her voice calm but tinged with surprise. "It's been a while." He nodded, unable to find the right words. Jake smiled shyly at her and waved, unaware of the history between them. For just a moment, the world seemed to pause. They both realized how far they had come, how time and choices had rewritten their lives in ways they never imagined. Yet here they were again, standing on a park path as the past flickered between them like a ghost. Max cleared his throat. "Hi, Marybeline." His voice was soft, his eyes cautious yet genuinely hopeful. It was clear that seeing her had stirred emotions he had buried for far too long. The little boy, Jake, remained close to his father, holding onto Max's hand like a lifeline. Marybeline took another moment to study the boy, his green eyes, the dimples in his cheeks, the innocent energy that seemed to radiate from him. "Hello there," she said, crouching slightly to greet him, her warm smile belying the fluttering of her heart. "What's your name?" "Jake," the boy said cheerfully, gripping his father's hand tighter but stepping closer to her. There was no guilt or pain in Jake's voice, just pure, unfiltered childhood innocence. Marybeline straightened and looked back at Max. "He's beautiful." Her words were genuine, though she couldn't hide the flicker of emotion in her eyes. Jake was a living reminder of what had happened between them, of the betrayal that had torn them apart. But as hard as it was to look at the boy, she couldn't pretend he wasn't a part of the world now, a part of Max's love, choices, and future. Max swallowed hard. "Thank you," he said softly. "He reminds me how much I've grown, how much I've learned." Marybeline gave a slow, thoughtful nod. She didn't know what to say to that. There was a time when she might have imagined seeing Max again and lashing out, unleashing the anger she had buried deep inside. But now, standing here under the summer sun, she felt lighter. The anger wasn't there anymore. Instead, there was just a quiet ache, a familiar pain that had dulled with time. She took a deep breath. "It's been a long time, Max," she said finally. "How have you been?" Max hesitated before answering, his hand instinctively tousling Jake's hair as he spoke. "I've been okay," he admitted. "I've made peace with some things. Still making peace with others. Jake's been my anchor in all this. He's the best thing I've ever done in my life, even if it came at a cost I'll regret forever." The sincerity in his voice was unmistakable. For the first time, Marybeline saw a man who was deeply humbled, who had been forced to face the consequences of his actions and choose whether to grow or crumble. Max had grown, in ways that were hard for her to process, but noticeable all the same. Marybeline crossed her arms loosely, glancing at Jake, then back at Max. "Do you still think about what we lost?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Max's expression tightened, and he nodded slowly. "Every single day," he murmured, his voice filled with the kind of regret that cut deep. "I live with the weight of knowing I broke something we might never have again. And I don't blame you for walking away, Marybeline. You deserved better, then and now." His honesty surprised her. There was no defense, no excuses, no attempt to place the blame elsewhere. Just truth. Marybeline studied him for a moment, her heart both aching and softening. Her life had moved forward. She had carved out a new path, rediscovered herself, and built a sense of joy she hadn't thought possible after the pain he caused. But standing here with Max, and seeing the little boy who had changed everything, she realized that forgiveness wasn't something she gave for him. It was something she gave for herself. "You were my first great love, Max," she said softly, her voice steady yet tender. "And part of me will always remember that. Part of me will always wonder, what if? But we're not those same people anymore. And that's okay." She smiled faintly. "I'm happy with where I've ended up, and I hope one day you'll feel the same, if you don't already." Max nodded quietly, a sad but appreciative smile on his face. "I'm trying," he said simply. "I may never stop wishing I could take back the hurt I caused you, Marybeline. But I'm glad to see you happy. You deserve that." They stood in silence for a moment, the weight of all their shared history lingering in the air between them. "Well," Marybeline said finally, her tone lighter, "it was good seeing you, Max. And Jake." She looked at the boy again, her smile widening. Her smile widened as she looked down at the boy. "And Jake, you take care of your dad, all right? He needs someone strong like you to keep him in line." Jake grinned, his bright green eyes sparkling, and nodded enthusiastically. "Okay," he said, giggling as he looked up at Max. Marybeline straightened and turned her attention back to Max, her face calm but resolute. "Take care, Max. And thank you for being honest, finally. It means more than you know." Max hesitated, his mouth opening as if he wanted to say more, but then he stopped himself and nodded. "Thank you, Marybeline, for everything. I wish you all the happiness in the world." With that, Marybeline turned and walked away, her heart feeling lighter than it had in years. She wasn't walking away from the pain this time, she was walking away from the weight of it. She had faced it head-on, seen the man who once broke her heart, and realized that she had healed. Her future was no longer tangled in the threads of the past. As she left the park, sunlight dancing through the trees, she allowed herself to hope for new beginnings. She had no idea what the future held, but for the first time in a long time, she was at peace with it. Years went by, and Marybeline blossomed into someone she never thought she could be. She started her nonprofit organization to support women struggling with infertility, turning her pain into a source of inspiration for others. Her work gave her purpose, helping her see that life's struggles could open new doors rather than completely close them. Max, too, grew in his way, finding greater meaning in fatherhood. Jake became his greatest teacher, reminding him daily of his responsibilities and the power of redemption. Though he and Marybeline never rekindled their relationship, he often felt a quiet gratitude for the lessons she had taught him about love and honesty. He loved his son fiercely and knew he was a better man because of both Marybeline and Jake. One day, at a charity event hosted by Marybeline's organization, she stood at the podium, sharing her story of resilience with a crowd of supporters. From the corner of the room, a stranger watched her with admiration, someone who hadn't walked into her life just yet but would soon become a new chapter in her story. This time, Marybeline was ready for love again. But this love wouldn't be born from desperation or betrayal. It would be born from the strength she had built in herself, the forgiveness she had offered to the past, and the hope she had allowed to bloom. And this time, it would be a love that could stand the test of anything. Thanks for watching. If this story has inspired you, subscribe, like, and share it.